In this video, we're going to jump into Unity. We're going to open up the set mesh materials functionality, and I'm going to show you a little bit about themes, which is more or less just how you save your settings in your set mesh materials. So inside of Unity, we have our OPCD meshes imported. They're in our scene. And what we're looking at right now are basically all the default, well, I shouldn't even say default. They're not the default. They're all the Blender assigned materials. So when we exported our FBXs out of Blender, they got included in there, got the materials that were assigned in Blender, which were these very bland colors, which worked well in Blender just because we needed to see the difference between, a fairway and a rough and sand and rough and this custom up here. So that worked fine. However, what we really need though was these to look more realistic so we can play golf. In addition to that, not only do we want to assign realistic looking materials, but we need to assign what we call physics. And physics will tell GS Pro, the game, what to do with the ball when it lands on it. Does it bounce a lot? Does it roll out a lot? Does it roll out a little? So set mesh materials does two things. It assigns the physics and it assigns the material or the look. So how do we do that? Well, how do we access the set mesh materials? Pretty simple. Come up here to GSP. We're going to do set mesh materials, and it's going to pop up in a window like this. Now, if this window is really big for you and doesn't fit on your screen, you need to go into your display settings, and let me show you this. Show the desktop, display settings, and if we go into display settings here, in my display, scroll down, see this 150%, you might need to lower that to 100% or something lower so that it fits. Okay, you can do that temporarily and then move it back. Typically people raise that up so you can see things better, and I have a 4K monitor, so that's why it's also needed to be at 150% of what I have right now. But just in case you don't see these buttons, it might look something like this, but this is going to be filling up your screen. Just an FYI. So here we are, we're in the set mesh materials. Let's talk about themes. So all these settings that you see down here, and you can actually scroll down and see even more down through here, all these settings can get changed by you, the designer, to change the look and performance of the materials or the physics of what you're assigned. And remember, set mesh material is going to do this in bulk for you because you have hundreds of shapes and you to assign those, you don't want to have to do them one by one. So if you make any changes in here and you want to refer back to them later on, you want to be able to save those, right? And that's what themes do. Okay, so up here, if I hit this little button, you'll see that I have 6 themes that are included with the base project. I've got this V4 default, V4 default plus outer, V4 lush, V4 lush plus outer, and V4 satellite plus outer. Let's start with V4 default. If I load that up, it goes into the slot, but it's actually not loaded in down here. Okay, you can see some of the stuff says lush. So this actually, almost all this stuff says lush. But in order to get this loaded up, it's in the slot. I have to hit load theme, and then the settings from this theme get populated throughout the bottom here. And same thing, if I were to come in here and change this to V4 default plus outer. So let me explain the difference here. V4 default plus outer is if you're using an outer terrain. In my course, this one I have an example, I did not, but you can see if I load that one up, this checkbox gets marked, and now I have a slot over here for my outer satellite image and my outer size to input the size of my outer terrain. Really, the only difference between our V4 default, let me load this up, and our V4 default plus outer is this checkbox. So right now, this V4 default is the same as the V4 default plus outer because I have that checkbox enabled. Okay, so really simple. And then of course, lush I already had loaded up. Let me load that one up and you see lush. And then if I loaded the outer, it would just look like this. And then this last one, which can get a little confusing, is V4 satellite. You might be thinking, well, what's going on here? I thought this is satellite. If I enable that, it's satellite on my outer. Slightly different. So this is satellite shader. The difference is that satellite shader will take a satellite image, okay, and overlay it on these shapes, on your course shapes, your Inkscape shapes, and it'll blend it together and it gives it a more realistic look and feel. It is not something I'm going to be covering in this None to Done series, but it is something I do cover in some other advanced videos on doing satellite shader. So for this particular, so for your first course, and especially if you're doing your first couple holes, I would suggest you either work with V4 Lush, or I would suggest that you work with V4 Default, this one. Okay, so work with those two. And then once you get and you want to explore satellite, you can always come back and work on satellite. So next thing is, how do we save these? So I would suggest never overwrite the default ones that are in here. So these 6, keep those in there unaltered. That way, if you ever need to go back to them or see how they were set, or you really muck up one of your own, you can always get back to those. Otherwise, if you overwrite them, it's kind of difficult to get them back. So how would you save this? So let's just say that I've made some changes in here and I want to save it as a new theme. Really simple. One, I can go down here to save settings as theme. I'm going to click that. And this warning really doesn't apply to this button. I think this might be a bug, but you can just hit continue. And you can write something in here. I'm going to say, I'm going to call this Hershey Country Club default. And I'm going to hit save. And now I have a new theme called Hershey Country Club default. And if I hit this arrow, you can see that is listed as one of my themes. Same thing, if I did something similar and I did Lush, loaded up Lush, I made some changes, I could do it save as theme and it would load up Lush. Another thing you're going to see here, and this is kind of protecting you as the end user and me, is if I do hit replace materials, okay, which is going to take all of our settings here and apply them. When I do that, I'm going to get my warning again. And remember, this is going to replace everything. So if you made any custom changes later on down the line, and then you come back here and you do replace materials again, it's going to overwrite all those. So just be aware of that. I hit continue. And now what it's going to ask me is to save my theme first before it goes out and apply it. That way you're not accidentally overwriting like one of these. So you could actually save a new theme name. Now, if I were to select V4 default and hit save, it's now going to take all my Lush settings, which is in the slot, and I had it loaded, and it's going to apply those to V4 default asset and overwrite. So I'm essentially going to have 2 V4 Lushes, one called V4 Lush and one called V4 default. I don't want to do that though. I'm going to cancel that. And we're going to assign these materials in another video, so you'll see that. I just want to make sure you guys are aware of themes and how themes work. And that's the end of the video. And the next one, we're going to look at some more set mesh settings.